Jane.
Yes. Welcome to the Understanding the OASIS eTMF Specification, an overview for TMF members webinar. We have two speakers here today. Jennifer Palchak, she is the chair of the OASIS eTMF Technical Committee, as well as CEO of CareLex, and Fran Ross, who is a member of the eTMF TC and Associate Director at Paragon Solutions. Welcome, and Jennifer, you can take it over.
Thank you, Jane. Welcome, everybody. I just want to make sure everyone can see the screen okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you for joining us to learn a little bit about the OASIS eTMF standard, kind of an overview, and then specifically how to get involved in commenting on the public review specification that's available right now. I kind of want to give you an overview here of kind of how we're going to handle the presentation today, and the goal is really to give substantial time for discussion and questions. So our goal is to whip through the presentation rather quickly and leave the second half of the webinar for question and answer. Fran Ross, I want to thank Fran Ross as well as Michael Agard, both from Paragon Solutions. They're going to be interjecting comments that along the presentation to really help enlighten listeners from a TMF reference model perspective. So we'll ask you to either type in questions or hold your questions to the end, and then we'll have plenty of time to go through them. So the OASIS eTMF Technical Committee is comprised of members from the biopharma industry, particularly those who serve the biopharma industry, meaning vendors. And everyone on the technical committee is highly focused on generating the standard for the eTMF interoperability. You'll see there's a whole variety of participants. One of the outstanding things about the OASIS process and the OASIS platform for developing standards is that OASIS is literally open, as the name says. It's a public organization, open to member participation at all times. And then, of course, during the public review process, we have anyone can participate in commenting as well. So OASIS is a leading global standards organization. There are more than 600 member organizations with 5,000 plus members worldwide. And we're just put up just a few of the many logos of companies that manage global document management products and services for the biopharma industry. So there's a global contingent of OASIS members who are dedicated to developing standardization within the technology arena. Why eTMF interoperability? Oracle, I think, states it very well, and so I've borrowed from them. It says interoperability reduces or eliminates the problems of islands of automation. It enables business processes to flow from one application to another, and that's really what we're after here. At current day, what happens is you have a sponsor that has a system. They maintain their TMF. You have the CRO that maintains their TMF, and the ability to migrate data back and forth is quite complicated unless they agree upon using the same system and the same nomenclature. But as is often the case, you have different reasons why different people want to use different nomenclature, and even if they agree on that, you still have back-end interoperability issues. So that's really our goal with the OASIS eTMF standard. Big picture, there are some guiding principles that were really kind of drive the eTMF standard being developed. The first and foremost is that we're here to create a technical standard that's based on standards. We, as is encouraged through OASIS, this is an open systems approach, which means that it's independent of any operating system, software application, or computer language. So that the standard does not dictate those details. This provides broad flexibility while providing standardization. To that same end, the goal of the eTMF standard is to remain open source and to be an independent resource that the entire industry can draw on. Now, having said that, part of the benefit of and the goal of the standard is that there's recognition that no matter how much standardization we can do, every company is going to have unique needs. And so part of what's built into the eTMF standard at OASIS is the ability to be flexible. And that's done through adding and editing, enabling there to be specific, organization-specific metadata terms and organization-specific content items. And even that can be interoperable if there's coordination that's done. And that can evolve over time so that as the standard changes, or as, not the standard, but as the need grows or shifts, that the standard can be modified down the line to meet those needs. In order to allow flexibility in the editing, of course, you have to have a set of rules for editing the metadata, and that's quite essential, and that's part of the draft specification that's released for public review right now that actually goes through the rules for editing. Ultimately, the goal of the
Jennifer, if you want to jump back up one slide, let me just add a little context there. Sure. No, not a problem. So from a TMF management perspective, one should be able to get out of a technical specification the ability for Company A to call a document a monitoring visit report, and Company B to call a document monitoring visit essential report, and the nomenclature wouldn't matter because in the back end the definitions have been aligned and the standards have been aligned to a single content type. So when you're thinking about the technical specifications, we're really driving to interoperability between organizations, and as Jennifer mentioned before, that's really very critical in how much outsourcing goes on in clinical trials today. But you can also think of it as a great use case for the partnerships that we see in so many organizations, as well as the activities around mergers and acquisitions. We're trying to drive out the problems of differentiation when you try to align content models by using supportive technology specifications that can make those content name differences go away.
That's a great comment, Fran, and it's very much the case. And again, it really, part of the goal of the standard is to enable, seamless data exchange between the various collaborators while handling this ongoing, it's never going to change as much as we'd like to think we'd all get on the same page. The reality is there's always variation. So Fran pointed out that ability to handle those variation in end-user views, if you will. Another goal of the eTMF standard is to define the formatting for documents and records for export and exchange between electronic systems to facilitate quality and compliance, and then maintaining a search, reporting, and archival capability while managing audit trail of documents. So what is the OASIS eTMF standard from a TMF reference model perspective? It's really a standard that's based on standards for machine-to-machine interoperability. And another way to think of that is data portability. I think that's an easier term to consider for instead of interoperability, which is really a technical term. So the standard is also a detailed specification for application developers, and that's really why there's a heavy leaning of vendors, because the standard that's being developed is a specification for application developers to use in building products and services that serve the clinical trials industry. One way to think of that is that this is really a technical roadmap for data portability within systems that's being developed. And there's three components to that technical roadmap, also known as the specification. That's what's out for public review right now. There's the content model, data model, and content model instance. It's technical terms, but the bottom line is it gives the architecture for application developers. There's the machine code that, again, is for application developers. And then there's the controlled vocabulary. And there's actually 4 different types of controlled vocabulary. And the one that most TMF reference models are keenly interested in, of course, is the domain-specific vocabulary, which is what pertains to the eTMF. So that is where the greatest degree of interest has been expressed as we've seen it to date. But the thing to keep in mind as we move forward in this discussion, and I think sometimes it's hard to remember that, but this is all a technical roadmap for development of applications by technical professionals. So here's what the eTMF standard is not. It is not an introduction of a new TMF model for content organization at the end user side. It's not a set of rules dictating the document names as viewed by users. Again, that's something that application developers are going to work to develop. They have to be responsive to the market, so they are going to be developing products or services that deliver what their customers want. And again, it's developed by the vendors. It's not a restrictive specification, and what I mean is some concern has been expressed regarding document format. Well, the specification actually integrates the IANA standard. Again, being a standard based on standards, we look to where standards exist already. And the IANA standard incorporates almost every document format you can think of, from JPEG to Microsoft to Adobe to 1,080 media types. It's also not restrictive in terms of the system approach. And again, vendors can develop offline, off-the-shelf products. They can develop networked solutions, and they can also develop cloud-based solutions. It's completely driven by those implementing the standard. One way to look at kind of how does this standard fit with the TMF reference model, think of the green boxes as what the end user sees in a system, and the orange areas as what is in the back-end architecture of the system being used. So what's being developed by the OASIS eTMF standard is that back-end architecture. However, what's not being determined and what will be determined by the application developers is what the end user sees. And there's, display labels are actually what are used to determine that, and that's going to be dictated by the vendors themselves. And so the magic of developing an interoperability standard for eTMF is that as long as the standard is used on the back end, you can have variation on the front end if need be. And I'll use the example of another language. You may have CROs who want to operate in another language. You may have CROs who really like TMF reference model, but they want to tweak it just a little bit. I was talking to a CRO about that just last month. So the magic of the specification and the OASIS eTMF standard being developed is that it enables seamless exchange without inhibiting the tailoring that sometimes needs to occur within the systems at the end user side. So if you think of it from the perspective of kind of what is the purpose, well, the TMF reference model taxonomy is used in and by clinical ops. It's the end user, and it's very valuable, and it's actually been a tremendous resource. And it's why the TMF reference model was referenced heavily for development of the controlled vocabulary for this technical standard. And then the eTMF standard integrates codes, the taxonomy, and the ontology used by the vendors to develop the interoperability that we're looking for. So how is this standard going to impact you? Certainly, the vendors will be most greatly impacted. Those vendors that opt to adopt the standard, and we expect it will be widely adopted, will implement company-specific solutions for the clinical trials industry that really meet their customers' needs. So they're the ones that are going to take the specification and integrate it for interoperability. The sponsors and the CROs really benefit greatly once that occurs, because what that does is it eliminates the landlock that right now you're with a particular vendor, you have all your data there, exchanging it, it's tough. It removes that, it enables exchange of data between sponsors and CROs, and the portability becomes readily apparent as soon as those standards are integrated into the products that are delivered to the market. Sites are impacted in a more limited way at present because this is a standard for the TMF, and as we all know, while there are documents that get pulled into the TMF from the site, right now that's not really the purview. There is some discussion at the OASIS technical committee level about this, but really this is a standard that's targeted toward entities that are using the TMF. Any comments, Michael or Fran, that you want to add?
No, when you get to the slides that describe the work at hand, I want to address the magic, because the magic can only happen with the support of the community. So we'll dig into how much assistance and feedback we want on people to take a hard look at the materials developed to date and make sure that this technical standard is built to the right specification.
Terrific.
Jennifer, I'd just like
Michael?
to add, I'd like to add too that we spend a lot of time working with clients in mapping documents from one system to another, and this is all sort of hard-coded, and then if anything changes, it becomes, you have to go back and revalidate your coding process. So this is a way to kind of get around that, of having to do that coding process every time, or mapping with each particular vendor. So it does add some flexibility and probably some efficiency down the line.
Michael makes an excellent comment, and that is wholly the focus of interoperability. I mean, it's about increasing efficiency for clinical trials operations, increasing accuracy, and reducing cost. And there's a lot of cost that gets built into every time you want to migrate the data or change something that you've got to go back and recode. And so, great point, Michael, and it's certainly something that the technical committee is heavily focused on. How do we make this widely usable by all vendors? Because the ultimate magic happens when the entire industry adopts this, and there's no longer expense incurred with migrating your data from one partner to another, among many other benefits. So now I'd like to talk about, what is the eTMF committee specification draft? And there's two, just for context here. So the OASIS eTMF technical committee is charged with evolving the charter and developing the standard. And in the process of developing the standard, part of it is to release a committee specification draft, which, as it says, is a draft document for public review and input. So that's the point we're at right now, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But there are three main components to the committee specification draft. There's the specification document itself. It's a 40-page document. It has a background on the standard, its purpose, the benefits. It has all sorts of detail on the core technology architecture, on the structure, and the standards that are used. There are conformance requirements. There's all sorts of stuff that for a clinical ops person is just great. That'll put you right to sleep. But there's a lot of information in there that's essential, and it is an essential part of the rest of the components. And none of these can be seen on their own as standalone. They're all integrated to develop the standard. The second part is the eTMF OWL file, which is really a machine code. To say it simply, it's machine code. It's what's used in the development of the applications for TMF reference model non-technical users. It is ultimate high boredom level. However, it's essential for the development of interoperability. And the metadata vocabulary, the third part that is a component, is actually integrated into the machine code once the metadata vocabulary is completed. So that third component is where TMF reference models members probably have the highest degree of interest, and certainly we would love the input, because there are core metadata, and then there are the domain, meaning the eTMF specific metadata. And that's what we're very interested in getting feedback from TMF reference model members on, because, again, you have a high degree of expertise in that area, and the more feedback we have, the better. So those are the three components of the committee specification draft, which is out for public review. This slide provides an overview of kind of the technical committee process. These are highly defined processes that are established by OASIS. There are very common standards used for standards development organizations, and these are OASIS's. So we have spent time from December of last year up to now as a technical committee developing a draft specification, and we got it to the point where we felt it was ready for public review. So as you'll see, that's what we're in right now. The committee specification draft was released for public comment, and we're in the 45-day public comment period, which ends August 8th. I will comment that it's really important to get your feedback. We'll drill on this later, too. But we've extended it 15 days beyond what is normally recommended for public comment. And we did that because we really want to give people ample time to comment and get back to us. This is the time to comment on this part of the specification. We will have additional public comment periods, but each time it's re-released, it's on the new material or changes that are made to the specification. We don't just keep revisiting the same material over and over again. So it's critical that we get public comment now on the material that's released, because that is not revisited over and over again. But you can see, this is a bit of a lengthy process. We actually will undoubtedly have another public review. We will assess the changes and get comment on that and the additions, and or maybe even deletions. And once the committee gets it to the point where it believes it's final, then it goes out for as a candidate OASIS standard and gets released for another round of public review. So that's the general process. As you can see, there's quite a path we need to follow as a technical committee. Some of the future implications of the OASIS eTMF standard are that really, always remember that developing a standard is an evolving process. We've really put a stake in the ground here to make a stand for interoperability within the industry. And so this is the first go at the standard. And the more input we have, the better. But we don't expect this to be the last version, if you will. These things do evolve, and as they get implemented and used, we learn from that. So we are working toward the first version of the standard, but it won't undoubtedly be the last. And to this end, there's a need for ongoing collaboration. We welcome the TMF reference model membership input. And again, one of the things that's really important to remember is, OASIS is an open group. It is always open to the public. And so anyone can join the OASIS TC, and we'll talk about that later. They can join at any time. In fact, we had Fujitsu join the technical committee. They officially joined this week and are now a part of the technical committee. Another piece to keep in mind is that education and implementation and training are going to be essential in terms of implementation of a standard, and that's going to happen at many levels. Both the OASIS TC has been committed to running educational webinars such as this one, as well as ongoing training will have to happen both pre-implementation and post-implementation of any standard. And then finally, the goal here is to support the changing industry needs ongoing. And so part of what we've built into the specification is the ability to do that and the flexibility, and that will have to be something that is attended to ongoing. So how do you participate in looking at this public review document? I mentioned briefly, but I will certainly emphasize that we would love to have participation on the actual technical committee. Even if you're not technically oriented, certainly there's a role for folks who have eTMF expertise to join on the metadata work group. And so that's an area where you can focus your time and be really productive and impactful. But specific to the public review document, all comments must be received via our comments link that OASIS mandates. So first and foremost, if you go to the link, and we will post this, and it's been released to the TMF reference model leadership, and we've asked them to post it both on the LinkedIn site as well as on the TMF reference model blog. And I know an email went out to TMF reference model members as well with this link. So this link actually takes you to all of the components of the specification draft. This is a zip file right here, and I'm going to cover that in a minute, kind of what that contains. Once you actually go through that, then, again, to comment, the only way to do that is to go through the OASIS Open comment link. The reason for that is that every single comment must be acknowledged by our technical committee, and every single comment will be reviewed. And this ensures that the actual commenter submits their comment directly. It's not rerouted. It's not edited. It's directly from the person making the comment. It gets logged, and then our technical committee reviews them, and then ultimately we report out on the resolution for every single comment. Any comments here, Michael and Fran?
No, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Just waiting to hear the questions from the community if folks aren't clear on the process steps here.
Okay. Just a couple of things to keep in mind, and I put this out here because it kind of helps you think through what are ways in which I can contribute. As you review the eTMF specification, and in particular, I urge you to look at the metadata vocab. What are the terms that are accurately mapped to the TMF reference model? Is there something that needs to be fixed in your opinion? Is there any terms that would create errors or compliance issues? Are there terms that you believe are missing, and if so, why? How do they relate to the other terms? Are there terms that documents, other terms for documents rather that are not contained in the TMF? So those are the types of things you can think of, certainly not all-inclusive, when you're making comments. And I'm now going to talk a little bit about how to be most impactful with your comments. Again, because every single comment gets logged and then the technical committee reviews them all, I ask you to focus on the goal, which is to develop the standard for interoperability on the eTMF. And to that end, please provide solutions, not criticisms. So for example, a poor comment that's not very useful is to ask, well, why is this a regulation cited, or this isn't useful. It's very useful if you said, for example, add the EMA and CDFA regulations, which are applicable here. Or this is not, I don't understand why this is used because, and explain. And to that end also, be specific. So for example, a poor example would be writing, use of specified field digital signature is not understood. Well, digital signatures are quite complex. There's a lot to that. What about that do you not understand? And more importantly, our technical committee can't really school everyone in how digital signatures work. Is there something specific that doesn't make sense based on your operations and how you view it? So a more useful comment, for example, is, hey, in Section 2, replace enterprise with electronic. This is a more commonly used term. So those are just minor examples of how to be more focused and specific, how to provide solutions rather than just a criticism when you're making your comments. And the other end, to that end too, there are highly technical elements of this, so really focus on the area of expertise that you're best suited to provide the impact, because then you will make a big impact. So again, to submit your comments, first you need to subscribe to the comment list, and then once you do you send in your comment on the link, and then you will be acknowledged by an OASIS member that your comment has been received. So this will be submitted, posted rather, after to the 23rd on OASIS, and certainly, if the TMF reference model wants to have this posted somewhere, we could have this slide posted. That would be fine too. So when you talk about going into the zip file link, you'll find the information shared with the TMF reference model via the email from Karen Roy includes this link. And when you open up the link at the zip file, you'll see that it has multiple documents. And the document that will probably be of greatest interest to the TMF reference model is the vocabulary folder. So it's opening up the vocabulary and going to the Excel spreadsheet that has vocabulary. You'll see the eTMF version 1.0 is in different formats. That's the 40-page specification document. And then the OWL is the machine code. So that's kind of a rundown on that. At this juncture, I'd like to turn it over to Fran and Michael and questions, the audience.
So it's a lot of information for folks to onboard, and we are grateful to be able to record these sessions so that you can come back to them. Also wanted to suggest to the community that if you start digging into the work and have some questions for your community peers about what best next steps to take or what are the actions, how should you frame your comments, etc. It could be very helpful to use the reference model LinkedIn group, and that way there will be insight for everybody involved in the reference model for anyone that's trying to figure out the pathways to get their comments back in. The materials that Jennifer's presented here are freely available to everyone also through the OASIS website. So we want to make sure everybody feels like they've got enough pathways and enough support to be able to dig into this important work. It's really critical that this community review the metadata model and give us feedback. You'll see when you open up that work that there are areas in there that even as an internal group we wanted to bring back to industry experts and get feedback from all of you also that there can be magic in this eTMF interoperability standards. So please don't hesitate to make sure that your efforts are supported, and please don't shy away from digging in and getting your comments back into the OASIS technical committee.
Another point to add too is that if you've had recent regulatory inspection and they ask for a specific document, want to make sure that that gets added to the list if it's appropriate, and we want to make it state of the art as to what is the current practice for regulatory inspections as well.
I believe we've had some questions. Dee?
Yeah, we have. Hi, Jennifer. Thank you very much, Fran, Jennifer, and Michael. So we have sort of a set of questions that basically kind of fall in the category, and you touched on this, but just if you could elaborate some more, the differences between, why are we doing eTMF? What's different about eTMF from the TMF effort?
So, I'll take a stab at that, and then Michael and Fran, if you want to weigh in as well. So really what was missing, from the industry to date is this interoperability, and that is what the OASIS eTMF standard is all about. It's about enabling machine-to-machine data exchange. And while building it on a standard that is highly flexible and based on standards that already are out there in the industry. So, web standards, WC3, on IANA standards in terms of documents, in terms of versioning, standards in terms of business processes, standards in terms of the controlled vocabularies like CDISC. And so that's the gist of it.
I think when we were approaching building the reference model, both version 1 and version 2, we were very careful to make sure that from a content structure perspective, the model could work in either a paper or electronic file master file management environments, right? So it's very important to remember that the OASIS Technical Committee's output is solely related to the interoperability of eTMF systems and managing that complexity of content differentiation between different organizations.
Michael, do you have anything to add here?
No, I think that's good. You know, it's really about having a standard to sources that's agreed upon, and the tagging, I think, is really important from a XML and metadata perspective that allows this to happen. And this is in addition to just having the vocabulary that's needed to make this process work.
Absolutely, Fran and Michael, I concur 100%, and that's the hard part to see from a non-technical perspective. But it's really, like Fran said, it really will create magic when this specification becomes a standard and is implemented.
So here's a more specific question: can the standard handle synonyms and alternate names?
Yes, the standard can. In fact, that's part of the metadata work we're really wanting folks to weigh in on, because we can add as many synonyms as we want, and it really enables searches to occur easily. So the short answer is yes, and the long answer is it's going to make life a lot easier for folks when we're done with it.
Okay. Here's a longer answer.
I just want to emphasize the magic comment one more time. It just is so critically vital that we get folks with lots of different perspectives in TMF management to chime in on the development of these standards. The magic, as anyone who is at the table for the reference model development knows, the magic cannot take place unless we get expertise and opinions from all different facets of the TMF community. So it's really critical that you all dig in and check out the drafts that are published thus far and give us your feedback on that material.
That's great, Fran. In fact, that leads very nicely into this next question. It's a two-parter, but I think it's important that we explore this a little bit more. How does the ongoing maintenance of the business content to date generated by the TMF reference model align with the technical life cycle of the technical standard?
Fran and Michael, do either of you want to take that, or?
I'm not sure. Can you repeat the question again?
I think it's really talking about alignment. Okay, so how does the ongoing maintenance of the business content to date has been generated by the TMF reference model group align with the technical life cycle of the technical standard? And then the second part, which I think adds some clarity, do the groups have a continuing relationship, or is the full effort taken into OASIS oversight? So how much connectivity, I think, how much shared tissue is there between the two efforts?
Sure. Well, I'll take the first part and then let Jennifer and Mike jump in. We recognize how critical it is to ensure that folks who've been reliant on the TMF reference model to date, if they're in an electronic environment and want to take advantage of this interoperability standard, that the alignment is going to have to be very closely maintained with what's been already used in that environment from a TMF reference model perspective. We remain committed to utilizing all of the work that's come forward from the reference model and adapting and adopting that work to be supportive of this sort of, system interoperability perspective. So we are laser focused on and aware that folks have, onboarded the reference model in a significant fashion, and the vendors have onboarded the reference model in a significant fashion, and it's front of mind as we look to promoting a standard that really will make interoperability work for everyone.
This is Jennifer. I would just add, just from a real pragmatic perspective, the way I hear that question is, okay, so how does this impact me in terms of implementing this standard? So what would happen is, as vendors adopt this standard, they're going to roll out, product, and it might look just like what they've got right now. It's just they have integrated on the back end of their architecture this specification. So through the use of what are called display labels, they may, display it just like it's used right now by their current clients. And so in that regard, it can be fairly seamless. There's always a learning curve when it's a new version or a new product. So I would anticipate there will be, a learning curve to a degree, but it will not be substantial as far as we can see. And so it's really going to be a matter of how vendors choose to roll out the specification as they implement it with their clients. But the goal is to make life easier and less costly when it comes to how trials are run.
I would just add, too, that as we've started this process to review the vocabulary with the TMF reference model, Karen Roy's first reaction was, we don't have time to do the version 3 update for the TMF reference model. And I think if you look back to version 1 of that and to version 2, there was a lot of changes, and hopefully there's less to version 3. And I think the same thing will happen with the eTMF standard in OASIS, where we've got the first version and we're going to go try to get that to a certain state, and then we'll see that we missed some things, and those are, again, the form when it's out for review, and that synchronization will need to occur. But hopefully that there's fewer and fewer changes as we get more mature with it.
That's great. That does tie. Yeah, that was helpful to me. I'm not seeing a lot of other questions, but I was thinking kind of in closing, we had a couple, actually I just got another one. Hang on. This is live, folks, so here we go. Here's another question. Will the standard development have any activity follow on in the HL7 assessment testing voting process?
So this is Jennifer. I will answer that. First of all, HL7 is a liaison organization to OASIS eTMF standard. We will be reviewing the RPS specifically from HL7 and integrating the languaging there and make sure that we're aligned. But we have to remember one thing that's really important. HL7 is heavily focused on migration of health data to the clinical arena. So, they're kind of a little bit focused elsewhere, and we have Mead Walker, who is a representative from HL7, who sits on the TC, and as he sees fit, he's integrating, and actually I anticipate him really getting involved again at the metadata level when we're reviewing all of the comments that come in. So.
Okay, very good. Fran, Michael, do you have anything to add?
I would just say again that if folks feel like they're lost in the supermarket as they approach this work, to use the LinkedIn group for the reference model to ask for support from colleagues, and any comments there will be then available for anybody else who's approaching this work. And we just really can't thank you enough for considering, looking through those lengthy sheets and adding your opinions, your thoughts, and your comments in a positive fashion, so that we can make sure that there really is some magic available for eTMF interoperability.
I think.
This is Jenna.
Do you have colleagues on the technical side that know about, metadata or document management systems? You can certainly forward some of the technical pieces to them as well.
And one thing I would add as well to TMF reference model members who, everyone's life is really busy. We recognize that, and we do have a deadline here. However, if you open up that metadata worksheet, you'll still see real quickly the the area of focus that pertains to what you're doing day to day. And, you know, maybe we suggest, and we've had Sharon Ames from NextDocs, who's been very involved in the TC, she suggested that members partner up, you know, get 2 or 3 of you and break it up and focus on working on comments that way. So there are different ways to approach it. We just encourage you to take a look, give your feedback, and get it in, because this is the one opportunity to get it in on this round as a public review. And then after that, it's going to be comments considered on any changes and alterations. So it's really essential if you want to give input, that now's the time. And we thank you for that.
Okay, so here, well, here's kind of a, I think this is probably a good closing question. So, you know, we're talking about getting this next milestone, but this is sort of a crystal ball kind of question. What do you think the impact will be on the marketplace once we get eTMF to the standards level? Again, it's a little crystal ball-y, and, you know, we might be overly optimistic because we're all really intimately involved with it. But any sort of speculation from the 3 of you on that?
I have my views, but I'd love to have Michael and Fran weigh in too.
I think it's going to take a period of time to roll this out. You know, you can look at CDIS standards, and that took some time. And, you know, it's really people to see the value of it that want this to make it happen. So, you know, it's like going to your vendors, going to your CROs, being customer-driven to be proactive to bring it forward. It will take time. It will take money for the vendors and sponsor CROs to invest in this technology and adaptation, but hopefully there's a return on that investment that people can see.
You know, I also would add, I concur with Michael, it's going to take time like any standard does. But think of it, just like HTML became the standard for web viewing, until HTML existed, people could not view anything on the web unconditionally. Now, HTML allows you to view any content on the web, and that is the purpose of the OASIS eTMF standard. And so I anticipate once implemented, yes, it will take time, but once implemented, the ease of data exchange will be significantly better, which will reduce costs. And the bigger picture value, much longer term, is, you know, access to data. Right now, there's discussion around repurposing, but the data is extremely difficult to access. Right now, clinical trial is run, and that data sits in a data silo, and it's never to be touched again in many cases. With the availability of analytics today, you know, there will be access to sponsors to really reevaluate clinical trial data from trials past and to begin to learn from that data as they consolidate and do analysis. So, you know, cost savings, decreased time, increased data portability, and with that, real-time viewing, and then longer term, just the ability to analyze what we've learned from trials that have been run, whether they failed or actually were ultimately approved.
Okay, you know, that was really great. We are at the end of our questions. I want to remind everybody that, again, we are all available. You can send any of us the questions. We will share them with the rest of the group. We will forward your technical questions onto the technical committee. Again, my name is Bea Scher. I work at OASIS. If you have any membership questions or overall questions about OASIS, I'm more than happy to help you out. I will be sending a link to the recorded version of this webinar as soon as we've completed the last webinar. And I'll be sending a follow-up email. So thank you, everybody. Jennifer, thank you. Fran, Michael, that was fabulous. I appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Take good care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.